The marble floors of the Castellano mansion gleamed under crystal chandeliers, each surface polished to perfection, reflecting a world I'd never truly belonged to. My reflection stared back at me from the black granite countertop, dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled into a tight bun, the plain gray uniform that marked me as staff, as invisible, as less than. I was 24 years old and 6 months pregnant, scrubbing toilets in a house that cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The morning sickness had finally passed, thank God, but exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. My feet ached in the sensible shoes I'd bought from a thrift store. My back protested every time I bent to clean the baseboards. And the baby, my little fighter kicked occasionally, as if to remind me why I was doing this. Why I worked 70 hours a week. Why I smiled and nodded and made myself invisible. "Maria!" Carmen's voice echoed through the service hallway, sharp and impatient. "Mr. Castellano's study needs to be cleaned before he returns from the city. And don't forget to use the special wood polish, not the regular one. Last time you left streaks. Last time had been Sophia, not me, but I'd learned not to correct Carmen. She was head housekeeper, and her word was law in this domain of wealth and whispers. "Yes, ma'am," I called back, grabbing my cleaning caddy and heading toward the east wing. The Castellano mansion wasn't just a house, it was a statement. 30 rooms spread across 3 floors, with grounds that stretched for acres. Gardens maintained by a team of 6, a garage housing cars I couldn't name, security cameras in every corner, and men in dark suits who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. I'd been working here for 4 months, ever since my ex-boyfriend Miguel had emptied our joint bank account and disappeared, leaving me pregnant and 3 months behind on rent. The agency had placed me here, warned me that the family was connected, that discretion was essential, that questions were forbidden. I'd needed the money too desperately to care. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The study smelled of leather and expensive cigars, of power and secrets. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with volumes in Italian and English. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface clear except for a single photograph in a silver frame. I'd looked at it before, curiosity getting the better of discretion. A young man stood beside an older one, both in suits, the family resemblance unmistakable. The older man had his hand on the younger one's shoulder, pride evident in his posture. Beneath the frame, a small plaque read, "Antonio Castellano, 1952 to 2019. Dante Castellano's father, dead 5 years now, according to kitchen gossip." I ran the special wood polish over the desk, careful not to disturb anything, my movements automatic after months of this routine. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and I paused, one hand pressing against the spot where a tiny foot had made contact. "Hey, little one," I whispered in Spanish. "Just a few more hours, then we can rest." The sound of heels clicking on marble made me straighten instantly. That particular rhythm, sharp, quick, impatient, belonged to only one person, Isabella Marchetti, Dante Castellano's fiancée. She appeared in the doorway like a vision from a fashion magazine, all sharp angles and cold beauty. Her black dress probably cost what I made in 6 months. Her jewelry caught the light with every movement, and her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't have a strand out of place. She was 31, educated in Switzerland, and from a family as powerful as the Castellanos. She was also the cruelest person I'd ever met. "You," she said, her Italian accent adding an edge to the English word. "Why are you still here?" I specifically told Carmen that Dante's study should be cleaned early this morning. I kept my eyes down, made myself smaller. "I apologize, Miss Marchetti. I was assigned the East Wing bedrooms first. I came as soon as I could." "As soon as you could," she repeated, moving into the room with predatory grace. "Do you have any idea who Dante Castellano is? What his time is worth?" "Yes, ma'am." Do you? She circled me slowly, and I could smell her perfume, something floral and suffocating. He's returning from New York in 2 hours. This room should have been perfect an hour ago. But instead, I find you here, moving like a pregnant cow, taking twice as long as anyone else. The insult stung, but I bit the inside of my cheek and said nothing. I needed this job. I needed the insurance that came with it, the steady paycheck, the small room in the staff quarters where I could sleep without fear of eviction. I'll work faster, Miss Marchetti. You'll work faster, she mimicked, her voice dripping with disdain. She moved to the desk, running one perfectly manicured finger along its surface, checking for dust or streaks. Finding none, she seemed almost disappointed. Then her eyes fell on me again, lingering on my swollen belly. Tell me, Maria, who was stupid enough to get you pregnant and then abandon you? The question was designed to humiliate, to remind me of my place. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but kept my voice steady. That's personal, Miss Marchetti. Personal. She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Nothing about you is personal, Maria. You're staff. You exist to serve this household, and right now, you're failing. She moved closer, and I could feel the hostility radiating from her like heat. I've been telling Dante that we need to replace you. A pregnant maid is a liability. You move slowly, you'll need time off, and then what? We're supposed to hold your position while you play mother to some bastard child? The word hit me like a slap, and, before I could stop myself, I looked up, meeting her eyes directly. It was a mistake. Did you just look at me? Her voice dropped to something dangerous, something that made the air in the room feel thinner. Did you actually just make eye contact with me, as if we're equals? I apologize, Miss Marchetti. I didn't mean, you didn't mean, she cut me off, her face twisting with rage. You don't mean anything, Maria. You're nothing. A piece of furniture in this house, easily replaced, easily forgotten. She stepped closer, so close I could see the fury in her ice blue eyes. And if you ever look at me like that again, I'll make sure you're not just fired. I'll make sure no agency in this city ever places you again. Do you understand? Yes, Miss Marchetti. Good. She stepped back, smoothing her dress as if my presence had somehow soiled it. Now finish this room in the next 10 minutes and get out of my sight. She left in a hurricane of perfume and malice, her heels clicking away down the marble hallway. Only when the sound faded completely did I allow myself to breathe, to unclench my fists, to feel the tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. I wouldn't cry. I couldn't. Not here, not where someone might see. The baby kicked again, and I placed my hand over the spot, drawing strength from that small movement. It's okay, I whispered. We're okay. Just a few more months, and then I'll find something better. I promise. I finished the study in 8 minutes. My movements efficient despite the exhaustion, despite the humiliation still burning in my chest. Then I gathered my supplies and headed toward the service stairs, keeping my head down, making myself invisible again. The main staircase was off-limits to staff during the day, but the service stairs were narrow and steep, harder to navigate with my changed center of gravity. I descended carefully, one hand on the railing, the other supporting my lower back. I was halfway down when I heard voices from the main foyer, male voices, speaking in rapid Italian. Called ahead. He wants the contracts ready for review tonight. And the Rossini situation? Handled, permanently. The words made me freeze. Handled, permanently. The kind of phrases that appeared in mob movies, that whispered of violence and consequences. I should have kept moving, should have disappeared into the service corridors where I belonged. But something, curiosity, stupidity, fate, made me pause at the landing, peering through the gap in the service door toward the main foyer. 3 men stood there, all in dark suits, all with the same watchful, dangerous air. And in the center, giving instructions with casual authority, was Dante Castellano himself. I'd seen him before, of course. Brief glimpses as he passed through the mansion, distant views as he left in one of his cars. But always from a distance, always with the safety of invisibility between us. Up close, even through the gap in the door, he was overwhelming. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of build that suggested both power and discipline. His suit was impeccable, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and narrow waist. Dark hair, slightly longer than fashionable, curled just above his collar. And his face, sharp jawline, straight nose, lips that looked cruel even in repose, and eyes so dark they seemed black from this distance. He was 36, according to the staff gossip. Unmarried, though engaged to Isabella for the past year. The engagement had been arranged by their families, a merger of 2 powerful dynasties, old money and older violence. He was also, everyone agreed, not a man to cross. Arriving at 8, he was saying, his Italian, perfect, unaccented, the language of his ancestors. Make sure the west dining room is prepared. 12 settings. And Alessandro, I want extra security on the grounds tonight. The Rosettas are getting bold. Understood, boss. I should have moved. Should have continued down the stairs to the basement, to the staff quarters, to anywhere but here. But I was transfixed, watching him move through his domain with the confidence of a king, watching the way other men deferred to him, watching the service door creaked. It was barely a sound, just the soft protest of old hinges. But in the marble foyer, it echoed like a gunshot. All 4 men turned toward the sound instantly, hands moving toward concealed weapons, bodies tensing for threat. And Dante Castellano's eyes, those impossibly dark eyes, locked directly onto mine through the gap in the door. For one endless moment, we stared at each other. Me, frozen on the service stairs, cleaning caddy in hand, pregnant belly prominent in my gray uniform. Him, powerful and dangerous and utterly still, assessing threat level, calculating response. Then his expression shifted, not to anger or annoyance, but to something I couldn't read, something that made my heart hammer in my chest for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. It's just staff, one of his men said dismissively, relaxing, but Dante didn't look away. His gaze held mine, intense and searching, as if he could see through the door, through the uniform, through every wall I'd built around myself. Sir? One of the men prompted. Finally, Dante blinked, breaking the connection. Continue with the preparations, he said, his voice low and controlled. I'll be in my study. He moved toward the east wing, toward the room I'd just cleaned, and I finally found the strength to move, to continue down the stairs, to disappear into the warren of service corridors below. My hands were shaking as I stored the cleaning supplies. My heart was still racing. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, that in that brief moment of eye contact, something irrevocable had occurred. I told myself I was being dramatic. He was the boss. I was a maid. He probably hadn't even registered my face, wouldn't remember me in 5-day minutes. But that night, lying in my narrow bed in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling while the baby kicked and turned, I couldn't stop thinking about those dark eyes and the way they'd held mine. As if he'd seen me, really seen me. For the first time since I'd arrived at the Castellano mansion, I wasn't invisible. The next morning started at 5:30, the same as always. I showered in the cramped staff bathroom, dressed in a clean uniform, and braided my dark hair into submission. My reflection in the spotted mirror showed the same tired face, the same shadows under my eyes, but something felt different. I couldn't name it. Just a prickling awareness, a sense of being watched even though I was alone. Breakfast in the staff kitchen was the usual chaos. Carmen barking orders, the cook arguing about grocery deliveries, the gardeners grabbing coffee before heading outside. I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, eating quickly, staying quiet. Did you hear? Sophia, another maid, leaned close to whisper. Mr. Castellano is hosting a dinner party tonight. 12 guests from New York. Very important. The Rossetti family. Marco, one of the security guards, added quietly. Negotiations. The way he said negotiations made it clear these weren't business discussions about restaurant franchises or construction contracts. These were the other kind of negotiations, the kind that happened in the shadows. Miss Marchetti has been in a mood all morning, Sophia continued, her eyes wide. She fired 2 florists because the arrangements weren't perfect, and she screamed at the cook for 20 minutes about the menu. I focused on my oatmeal, saying nothing, drawing no attention. Maria. Carmen appeared at my elbow, her weathered face stern. You're on the 2nd floor today. The guest suites need to be perfect by this afternoon. Fresh linens, flowers, the works. Yes, ma'am. And stay out of sight once the guests start arriving. Mr. Castellano doesn't like staff visible during these events. Of course. I spent the morning in the guest suites, changing linens, dusting surfaces that were already immaculate, arranging flowers in crystal vases. The rooms were beautiful, each one decorated in soft neutrals with touches of luxury that made my staff quarters look like a prison cell in comparison. The baby was active today, kicking and rolling, making my movements awkward. I'd started talking to her. I was sure it was a girl, though I hadn't asked at the ultrasound throughout the day, softly narrating my tasks. See this pillow? It costs more than your crib will. Isn't that insane? I was fluffing said pillow when I heard voices in the hallway, female voices, one of which I recognized immediately. Isabella Marchetti. And she wasn't alone. Absolutely essential that everything is perfect tonight, Isabella was saying, her voice tight with stress. Dante's father made promises to the Rosettis before he died, and now Dante has to honor them or risk looking weak. But surely they understand that circumstances change. Another woman replied, her tone soothing. Dante has proven himself more than capable. Capability isn't the issue, Angela. Perception is. And right now, the perception is that Dante is distracted, soft, not as ruthless as his father. They'd stopped just outside the suite I was cleaning. I froze, knowing I should announce my presence, but terrified of Isabella's reaction if she knew I'd overheard. Soft? Angela laughed. Dante? That's absurd. Is it? Isabella's voice dropped lower, more intimate. He's been questioning decisions, showing mercy to people who cross him. Last month, he let that restaurant owner keep his business instead of burning it down as an example. And the Moretti situation he negotiated instead of eliminating the problem. Maybe he's trying a different approach. Maybe he's weak. Isabella cut her off. And if he's weak, then this family is vulnerable. The Rosettis will smell it tonight, and they'll push for more concessions, more territory, more of everything. Silence. Then Angela asked quietly, what does his inner circle say? Alessandro is loyal but concerned. The others are watching, waiting to see if Dante can fill his father's shoes or if he's just playing at being a boss. More silence. I didn't dare breathe. And you? Angela finally asked. What do you think? Isabella's laugh was cold, calculating. I think I'm engaged to a man who's losing his edge. And if he can't hold his empire together, then I'll need to consider my options. The Marchetti name opens many doors, Angela. I'm not going to chain myself to a sinking ship just because our fathers arranged it. The words hung in the air, ugly and mercenary. This was the woman Dante Castellano was going to marry, someone who viewed him as an investment, who was already planning her exit strategy. Come, Isabella said, her heels clicking as she moved away. I need to check the dining room setup. Their voices faded down the hallway, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I shouldn't care. Dante Castellano's personal life, his business struggles, his cold fiancée, none of it was my concern. I was staff, invisible, irrelevant. But I couldn't shake the image of him from yesterday, the way he'd looked at me through the service door. There'd been something in his eyes, something that didn't match Isabella's description of weakness. I finished the guest suite quickly and moved on to the next, keeping my head down, making myself small. By 3 p.m, all 6 suites were perfect, and I was exhausted, my feet swollen, my back screaming. I retreated to the staff quarters to rest for an hour before the evening shift, lying on my narrow bed with pillows propped under my feet. The baby had finally settled, and the quiet was blissful. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, someone was pounding on my door. "Maria! Maria! Get up!" Sophia's voice, panicked and urgent. I struggled upright, my body protesting. "What's wrong?" "There's been an incident. Miss Marchetti. She's just come quickly." I followed Sophia through the service corridors, my heart hammering. An incident could mean anything in this house, from a broken vase to something much worse. We emerged into the main kitchen to find absolute chaos. Carmen was on her phone, speaking rapidly in Italian. The cook stood with his hands on his head, looking stricken. And in the center of the room, kneeling on the floor surrounded by shattered china, was Lucia, the youngest maid, barely 18. She was crying, her hands bleeding from the broken pieces. "What happened?" I asked, moving instinctively to help her up. "Miss Marchetti," Lucia sobbed. "I was bringing in a sample of the china settings for tonight, and she said they were wrong, that I was incompetent, and she swept the entire tray out of my hands." I looked at the destruction on the floor. 12 place settings, shattered. Thousands of dollars of imported Italian china, destroyed in a fit of rage. "Where is Miss Marchetti now?" I asked, helping Lucia to her feet carefully, steering her away from the sharp edges. "She went upstairs," Carmen said, ending her call. Her face was grim. "Mr. Castellano is going to—" She stopped herself, glancing at all of us. "Just clean this up, quietly, and Lucia, go to my office. I'll deal with your hands." Sophia and I grabbed brooms and dustpans, working quickly to clear the debris. The door to the main house swung open, and Marco, the security guard, appeared. "Is everyone all right?" "I heard something break," Carmen said quickly. "Just an accident." Marco's eyes swept the room, taking in the extent of the damage. The blood on Lucia's hands, our tense faces. He frowned. "This wasn't an accident." "It's handled," Carmen said firmly. "Please return to your post." But Marco didn't move. He pulled out his radio. "Boss, you need to know about something in the kitchen." "Marco?" "No," Carmen started. "It's Miss Marchetti, sir." Marco continued into the radio. "There's been another incident with the staff." The radio crackled. Then Dante's voice, low and controlled. "I'm coming down." The entire kitchen fell silent. Carmen's face went pale. "Everyone, back to work. Now." Sophia and I continued sweeping, but my hands were shaking. Another incident. That implied there had been others, that this wasn't the first time Isabella had terrorized the staff. Footsteps on the service stairs, quick and purposeful. Then Dante Castellano walked into the kitchen, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. He was still in his suit from earlier, tie loosened slightly, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. His dark eyes swept the room, taking in every detail: the broken china, Lucia's bloodied hands, our fearful faces. "Explain," he said, the single word carrying absolute authority. Carmen stepped forward. "There was an accident with the dinner china, Mr. Castellano. We're handling it." "That's not what Marco said." His eyes moved to the security guard. "Report." Marco straightened. I heard shouting and breaking glass. "When I checked in, I found this." He gestured to the destruction. "And I saw Miss Lucia crying with blood on her hands. The staff said Miss Marchetti was responsible." Dante's jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" "Upstairs, sir." "In the West Wing?" He nodded once, then his eyes found me, still kneeling with the dustpan, still trying to be invisible. Our gazes locked, and for the second time, I felt the intensity of his focus, the weight of his attention. "You," he said, "the pregnant one." "Maria, is it?" My mouth went dry. "Yes, sir." "Did you witness what happened?" I swallowed. Truth or loyalty to the unspoken rule of never tattling on the family. But looking at Lucia's bleeding hands, at the fear in everyone's eyes, I made my choice. No, sir. I arrived after. But Lucia said. Miss Marchetti swept the china tray from her hands deliberately. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Thank you for your honesty. He turned to Carmen. Get Lucia to the doctor. Have her hands properly treated. If there's any scarring, she's to see a plastic surgeon on the family's expense. Carmen nodded, relief evident on her face. Marco, find Miss Marchetti and inform her I need to speak with her in my study. Immediately. Yes, boss. Dante's eyes swept the room one more time, lingering briefly on me before he turned and left, his footsteps fading up the service stairs. The moment he was gone, everyone exhaled collectively. Back to work, Carmen said quietly, and not a word about this to anyone. Understand? We all nodded, but I couldn't stop my hands from trembling as I finished cleaning up the broken china. Dante Castellano had looked at me, had asked my name, had thanked me for my honesty. And somehow, I knew that simple interaction was going to change everything. The staff quarters were underground, windowless corridors lit by flickering fluorescent lights that hummed constantly. My room was barely 10 feet by 8 feet, a narrow bed, a small dresser, a sink in the corner. No private bathroom, no natural light. But it was mine, and after the chaos in the kitchen, I was grateful for the solitude. I lay on the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, one hand on my belly where the baby was doing somersaults. My mind replayed the scene over and over, Dante's dark eyes finding mine across the kitchen, the way he'd said my name, the authority in every word he spoke. And Isabella. Whatever conversation was happening in his study right now, it wouldn't be pleasant. I shouldn't care. Their relationship, their conflicts, none of it involved me. But I couldn't shake the memory of Isabella's voice in the hallway earlier. If he can't hold his empire together, then I'll need to consider my options. A sharp knock on my door made me jolt upright. Maria, it's Sophia. Can I come in? I opened the door to find her pale-faced, wringing her hands. What's wrong? Miss Marchetti just left the mansion. She was screaming loud enough that everyone upstairs heard her. She told Mr. Castellano that she wouldn't be disrespected in her own home, that if he was going to side with the staff over her, maybe they shouldn't get married at all. My stomach dropped. She broke off the engagement? I don't know. But she got in her car and drove away. And Mr. Castellano. Sophia's eyes were wide. They say his office looked like a crime scene. Not blood, but he destroyed everything. The desk, the chairs, everything. This wasn't good. A man like Dante Castellano, pushed to violence by his fiancée's behavior? The fallout would be catastrophic. Carmen wants everyone to stay in the quarters tonight, Sophia continued. The dinner party is canceled. The Rosettas are being told there's a family emergency. I nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me. After Sophia left, I tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. Around midnight, I gave up and decided to make tea in the small staff kitchen down the hall. The corridors were empty, everyone either asleep or hiding from whatever storm was brewing above. I was waiting for the water to boil when I heard footsteps, not the soft shuffle of staff, but the confident stride of someone who owned every inch of this house. Dante Castellano appeared in the doorway of the staff kitchen, and my heart stopped. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark slacks and a black shirt, sleeves rolled up, top buttons undone. His hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly, and his eyes, when they found me, held an intensity that made my breath catch. Maria, he said, my name sounding different in his mouth than it ever had before. Not harsh like Isabella's pronunciation, but almost gentle. Mr. Castellano. I straightened instinctively, pulling my robe tighter around my pregnant belly. I'm sorry, I couldn't sleep. I just wanted some tea. Don't apologize. He moved into the small space, and suddenly the kitchen felt impossibly tiny. I came down here to think. Sometimes the mansion feels too large. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I stayed silent, watching the water heat. He leaned against the counter, studying me with that unsettling focus. "How long have you worked here?" "4 months, sir." "And before that?" "I worked at a hotel in the city. Housekeeping." "No family?" The question was too personal, but something about the lateness of the hour, the intimacy of the small space, made me answer honestly. "My parents died when I was 16. Car accident. I was in foster care until I aged out at 18. His expression shifted, not quite sympathy, but understanding. "And the baby's father?" I tensed. "Not in the picture. Did he hurt you?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that I looked up sharply. Dante's eyes were dark and serious, his jaw tight. "Not physically," I said carefully. "But he took everything I'd saved and left me 3 months pregnant with nowhere to go." Something dangerous flickered across his face. "His name?" "Why?" "Because men who abandon pregnant women deserve consequences." The casual menace in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else, a warmth that spread through my chest, a sense of being protected that I hadn't felt in years. "Miguel Santos," I heard myself say. "But please, I don't want any trouble. I just want to work, save money, give my baby a good life." Dante nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Miguel's name was now on some invisible list, filed away for future reference. The kettle whistled, breaking the tension. I poured hot water over a cheap tea bag, the steam rising between us. "What you did today," Dante said quietly. "Telling the truth about Isabella. That took courage." I wrapped my hands around the mug, needing something to hold. "Lucia didn't deserve what happened to her." "No, she didn't." He paused. "Isabella has been difficult with the staff. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. With respect, sir, everyone knew. We just couldn't say anything." His jaw clenched. "That ends now." The weight of those 3 words hung in the air. I sipped my tea, acutely aware of how close he was standing, of the way his presence seemed to fill every corner of the small kitchen. "The engagement," I said, then immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry. That's not my business. It's over." His voice was flat, final. "It should have ended months ago. I was honoring my father's arrangement, but I won't marry someone who terrorizes people who can't defend themselves." I risked looking up at him. "The families won't be happy." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The families are never happy. But this is my decision, not theirs." If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. We stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the hum of the ancient refrigerator in the corner. "You should rest," he said finally. "The baby needs you healthy." "Yes, sir." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Maria? From now on, if anyone treats you poorly, staff or family, you come directly to me. Understood?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He disappeared into the darkness of the corridor, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and cooling tea. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Isabella didn't return. Her belongings were packed by her personal assistant and removed from the mansion. The dinner party with the Rosettis was rescheduled. And Dante Castellano, according to staff gossip, had become even more ruthless in his business dealings, as if breaking the engagement had unleashed something previously restrained. I kept my head down, worked my shifts, tried not to think about midnight conversations in small kitchens. But then, on the 4th day, everything changed. I was cleaning one of the guest suites when Carmen appeared in the doorway, her expression strange, something between concern and confusion. "Maria, Mr. Castellano wants to see you in his study." My heart stopped. Did I do something wrong? No. At least, I don't think so. She twisted her hands together nervously. "Just be respectful, and don't mention anything about Miss Marchetti unless he brings it up first." I followed her upstairs, my pulse hammering in my ears. The study looked different from the last time I'd seen it. New furniture had replaced whatever Dante had destroyed in his rage. The desk was darker wood, heavier, more imposing. Dante stood by the window, his back to the door, silhouetted against the afternoon light. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, dark gray this time, and even from behind, his posture radiated controlled power. "Mr. Castellano, Maria is here," Carmen announced. "Thank you, Carmen. You may go." Carmen shot me one last worried look before closing the door behind her, leaving me alone with him. Dante turned slowly, and I was struck again by his presence. The sharp angles of his face, the darkness of his eyes, the way he seemed to command the space around him. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. I sat carefully, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. He didn't sit behind the desk, but rather leaned against it, putting us almost at eye level. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "The pregnancy? Everything progressing well?" "Yes, sir. The baby is healthy." "Good." He studied me for a long moment. "I've been making some inquiries, Maria, about your situation." My stomach clenched. "Sir?" "Miguel Santos. It turns out he has a history of this kind of behavior. You're the third woman he's conned, though you're the first to end up pregnant." Heat flooded my cheeks, shame, anger, humiliation all at once. "I don't understand why you—" "Because you work for me," he cut in, his voice gentle but firm. "And people under my protection don't get victimized without consequences. I never asked for your protection." "No," he agreed. "You didn't. But you have it anyway." The words hung between us, weighted with meaning I didn't dare examine. "I'm having my lawyers draw up papers," he continued. "Miguel will be required to pay child support, retroactive to when he left. The money will go into a trust for your daughter." I stared at him. "How did you know it's a girl?" A small smile touched his lips. "I asked the doctor who treated Lucia's hands. You had an appointment with her last week for a checkup." He'd been monitoring my medical care. The thought should have felt invasive, but instead, I felt cared for in a way I hadn't experienced since my parents died. "That's not all," Dante said, his expression growing more serious. "I'm moving you out of the staff quarters." Panic flared. "Are you firing me?" "No. I'm giving you proper accommodations." He pulled a folder from his desk and handed it to me. "There's a cottage on the property, near the east garden. It's been unused for years, but I've had it renovated. 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, private entrance. It's yours." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were photographs of a charming stone cottage with window boxes and a small front yard. The interior shots showed hardwood floors, updated appliances, furniture that looked comfortable rather than merely functional. "I can't accept this," I whispered, even as my heart ached with wanting. "You can, and you will." His voice was firm. "You're 6 months pregnant, Maria. You shouldn't be living in a basement room with no windows. Your daughter deserves better than that." "But why?" The question burst out of me. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm just a maid." Dante's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering behind his usual control. "Because when I look at you, I don't see just anything." He moved closer, his voice dropping lower. "I see a woman who speaks truth when it would be easier to stay silent, who works herself to exhaustion to build a better life for her child, who has every reason to be bitter and broken, but instead shows kindness to everyone around her." My breath caught in my throat. "And because," he continued, even quieter now, "when Isabella was screaming at me that I was weak, that I'd lost my edge, all I could think about was you on your knees in the kitchen, cleaning up her mess with blood on the floor, and I realized I didn't want to be the kind of man who allows that. Not anymore." Tears burned behind my eyes. "Mr. Castellano, Dante," he said. "When we're alone, call me Dante. Dante." I tried the name, feeling how it shaped my mouth. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the cottage." Say you'll let me help you." I looked down at the photographs, at the home he was offering. Not just a room, but an actual home. For me and my daughter. Safety. Security. A chance at the kind of life I'd stopped dreaming about. "Yes," I whispered. "Thank you." His smile was genuine, transforming his usually stern face into something almost boyish. "Good. You can move in this weekend. I'll have staff help with your things." I stood on shaky legs, still clutching the folder. I should get back to work. "Maria?" He caught my arm gently as I turned to leave. His hand was warm through my sleeve, and I felt the touch like electricity. "This isn't charity. And it's not payment for your silence or your loyalty. Then what is it?" His dark eyes held mine, and in them I saw something that made my heart race for entirely new reasons. "It's the beginning of something I don't fully understand yet, but I want to find out. If you're willing." I should have been scared. Should have run from this powerful, dangerous man who was looking at me like I was precious. But standing there in his study, with his hand on my arm and his eyes holding mine, all I felt was safe. "I'm willing," I said softly. His smile widened slightly, and he released my arm. "Then I'll see you this weekend, when you're settled." I left his study in a daze, my mind spinning. In the corridor outside, I found Sophia and 2 other maids trying very hard to look like they hadn't been eavesdropping. "Maria!" Sophia grabbed my arm. "What happened? Are you okay?" I'm moving. To the cottage." Their eyes widened in perfect synchronization. "The cottage?" Sophia breathed. "But that's almost like being family, not staff." "I know. And Mr. Castellano." Another maid, Teresa, leaned in. Are you two?" "No," I said quickly. "It's not like that. He's just being kind." But even as I said it, I remembered the way he'd looked at me. The way he'd said the beginning of something. Sophia exchanged glances with Teresa, both of them wearing knowing expressions. "If you say so," Sophia said diplomatically. "But Maria? Be careful. Men like Dante Castellano, they don't do anything without a reason." Her words echoed in my mind as I returned to my duties, as I cleaned and dusted and tried to process everything that had just happened. She was right to warn me. Dante Castellano was dangerous, powerful, connected to violence and darkness I could barely imagine. Getting closer to him was playing with fire. But as I lay in my basement room that night, feeling my daughter kick and dream, I couldn't bring myself to be afraid. Because for the first time in years, someone saw me. Really saw me. And that feeling was more intoxicating than any danger could be terrifying. Moving day arrived with unexpected fanfare. I'd assumed I would pack my few belongings in a bag and walk them to the cottage myself. Instead, at 9 a.m, Marco appeared at my door with 2 other security guards and a maintenance worker. "Mr. Castellano's orders," Marco said with a slight smile. "We're here to help you move. I don't have much. Doesn't matter. Boss wants it done right." They carried my pathetic collection of belongings, 1 suitcase of clothes, a box of toiletries, 3 books, and the stuffed rabbit I'd bought for the baby, with the same seriousness they might have shown transporting crown jewels. The walk to the cottage took us through the east garden, where roses bloomed in careful rows and a fountain burbled peacefully. The morning sun was warm, the air sweet with the scent of flowers, and for a moment, I could almost forget this was still part of the Castellano estate, still within the walls that kept the dangerous world at bay. The cottage was even more beautiful in person than in the photographs. Stone exterior with ivy climbing the walls, window boxes filled with cheerful flowers, a red front door that gleamed in the sunlight. Marco unlocked it and stepped aside. "After you, Miss Maria." I walked in and had to bite my lip to keep from crying. The interior had been completely transformed. The living room featured comfortable furniture in soft blues and creams, throw pillows that invited curling up with a book, and a fireplace with a basket of wood beside it. The kitchen was small but perfect, with modern appliances and a table for two by the window. But it was the bedrooms that broke my composure completely. The master bedroom had a queen-size bed with a thick mattress, soft linens, and more pillows than any one person needed. An attached bathroom featured a deep soaking tub and a shower with excellent water pressure luxuries I'd almost forgotten existed. The second bedroom had been set up as an office, with a desk, a comfortable chair, and built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled. And the third bedroom. The third bedroom was a nursery. A white crib stood against one wall, already dressed with soft pink bedding, a changing table, a rocking chair with a footstool, a dresser painted soft yellow. On the walls, someone had stenciled clouds and stars, creating a dreamy sky, and in the corner, a mobile hung above the crib, wooden animals that would spin and dance in the slightest breeze. I stood in the doorway, one hand on my belly, tears streaming down my face. Mr. Castellano had the decorator ask what colors you liked. Marco said quietly from behind me. We heard you telling Sophia you hoped for yellows and pinks, gentle colors. He did all this? My voice was barely a whisper. He spent 3 days overseeing it personally. Wanted everything perfect. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. The kindness of it, the thoughtfulness, it was overwhelming. Marco cleared his throat. We'll leave you to settle in. But Miss Maria? The boss wanted you to know he'll stop by this evening. If that's all right with you. I wiped my eyes and nodded. Yes, that's fine. After they left, I explored every inch of my new home, touching surfaces to convince myself it was real. The pantry was stocked with food. The refrigerator held fresh milk, eggs, vegetables. The bathroom cabinets contained toiletries better than anything I'd ever owned. In the living room, I found an envelope on the coffee table with my name written in strong, masculine handwriting. Inside was a note. Maria, this is your home now. Not a favor, not alone yours. The utilities are covered, the property maintained by the estate staff. You are still employed, but your duties are reduced to part-time, and you'll work only the hours that don't strain you or the baby. There's a car in the small garage behind the cottage, nothing fancy, but reliable. Use it as needed. Doctor's appointments, errands, whatever you require. I know this is a lot to accept. I know you're independent and proud. But sometimes, letting someone help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I'll come by tonight around 7. If you'd rather I didn't, call my private number programmed into the phone I'm sending over with this note. D.P.S. The cottage has full internet and cable. Also, I took the liberty of starting a baby registry at 3 stores downtown. You can add whatever you need, and it will be delivered. Don't argue, just do it. I read the note 3 times, emotion swelling in my chest with each pass. This wasn't just kindness. This wasn't just protection. This was Dante Castellano, making space in his life for me, rearranging his world to accommodate mine. I should have been cautious. Should have questioned his motives, looked for the strings attached. But sitting in the rocking chair in my daughter's nursery, running my hand over the soft pink blanket, I couldn't find any room for doubt. I wanted this, wanted him, wanted whatever was beginning between us with an intensity that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock on my red door. I'd spent the afternoon unpacking my meager belongings. They barely filled 1 drawer, and then showering and changing into my nicest dress, which wasn't saying much. It was a simple cotton sundress in pale yellow, stretched over my pregnant belly, but it was clean and made me feel almost pretty. When I opened the door, Dante stood on my front step holding a bouquet of wildflowers and looking uncertain in a way that seemed completely at odds with his usual confidence. "Hi," he said, and the simple greeting in that deep voice made my stomach flutter. "Hi, come in." He stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the cottage, checking that everything met his standards. "Is it all right? If something's not right, we can change it. It's perfect," I said softly. "More than perfect." Dante, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. He handed me the wildflowers. These are from the far meadow. I thought you might like them better than the formal arrangements Isabella always insisted on. I took the flowers, touched that he'd picked them himself rather than having staff do it. They're beautiful. Let me put them in water. He followed me into the kitchen, and I was acutely aware of how domestic this felt him in my space, me arranging flowers while he leaned against the counter watching. Have you eaten? He asked. Not yet. I was too excited about everything to think about food. Then let me cook for you. I blinked. You cook? A smile tugged at his lips. I lived alone for 5 years before my father died, and I inherited the mansion and its army of staff. I learned to feed myself. I gestured to the kitchen. Be my guest. What followed was one of the most surreal hours of my life. Dante Castellano feared Mafia boss, ruthless businessman, man who could destroy lives with a word moved around my small kitchen with surprising ease, preparing pasta carbonara from scratch while I sat at the table, feet up, watching. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms corded with muscle. His movements were efficient, confident, and I found myself mesmerized by the simple domesticity of it. My mother taught me, he said, catching my stare, before she died. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was only half a man. How old were you when she passed? 12. His voice was neutral, but I heard the old pain beneath it. Cancer. It was quick, which I suppose was a mercy. I'm sorry. He nodded, stirring the pasta. My father never recovered. He threw himself into the business, into building the empire. I think he believed if he could just accumulate enough power, enough wealth, he could protect what was left. Protect me. Did he? Yes and no. Dante plated the pasta with surprising artistry. He kept me physically safe, gave me every advantage. But he also taught me that emotions were weakness, that caring too much about anyone made you vulnerable. He brought the plates to the table and sat across from me. I believed him. Until recently, our eyes met, and the air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken meaning. The pasta was delicious, creamy, and rich, with just the right amount of pepper. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Dante spoke again. I need you to understand something, Maria. My world, it's not safe. There are people who would use anyone close to me as leverage. Enemies who wouldn't hesitate to hurt an innocent woman and her child if they thought it would weaken me. My appetite vanished. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying you will be if people realize you're important to me. He set down his fork, his expression serious. That's why I'm telling you this now, before things go any further. You have a choice. You can stay here, work part-time, be safe and protected, but distant. Or, his dark eyes held mine. Or you can let me into your life completely. Let me be there for your daughter's birth. Let me care for you both. He paused, seemingly searching for words. Let me try to be the man my mother hoped I'd become, before my father's world hardened me into something else. My heart hammered in my chest. And if I choose that, what does it mean? It means you're mine to protect, he said simply. It means anyone who threatens you answers to me. It means I'll do everything in my power to give you and your daughter the life you deserve. And what do you get from this arrangement? A smile ghosted across his lips. The chance to be something more than what I was born into. The chance to see the world through your eyes. The chance to... He stopped, then continued more quietly. To not be alone anymore. The vulnerability in that last admission broke something open inside me. This powerful, dangerous man was lonely. Had been lonely, I realized, for much longer than the few days since Isabella left. I choose the second option, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I choose you. Something blazed in his eyes, relief, joy, possession, and then he was standing, coming around the table, pulling me gently to my round feet. You're sure? His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking my cheeks. Once you're mine, Maria, I don't let go easily. I'm sure. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like I'd imagined. Not rough or demanding, but achingly gentle, reverent even, as if I were something precious and breakable. His lips moved over mine with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes, and when he pulled back, I saw my own wonder reflected in his face. I don't deserve you, he whispered against my forehead. But I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. I laughed, the sound watery with emotion. I don't deserve a nursery painted with stars or a man who cooks me dinner. I guess we're both selfish. He smiled, really smiled, and I saw the man he might have been if life had been kinder. Then he kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt the world shift around us, pieces falling into place that I hadn't even known were scattered. When we finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay with me tonight," I whispered. "Just sleep. I don't want to be alone." "I'll stay as long as you want me." We finished dinner talking about small things, his mother's other recipes, my parents' restaurant they'd owned before the accident, the books we both loved. Then he helped me clean up, and we moved to the couch, where I curled against his side, his arm around my shoulders, his hand resting gently on my belly. "She's kicking," I said softly. "May I?" I guided his hand to the spot where my daughter was performing gymnastics. His eyes widened when he felt the movement, and his expression transformed into something I'd never seen before, pure, unguarded wonder. "She's strong," he murmured. "She'll have to be, growing up in our world." "Our world," he repeated, testing the phrase. Then he looked at me with fierce determination. "I'll make it safe for her, Maria. Whatever it takes, I'll build a world where she can grow up without fear." I believed him. Maybe I was naive, maybe I was foolish, but looking into his dark eyes, I believed every word. We fell asleep there on the couch, his arms around me, his breath warm against my hair. And for the first time since Miguel had left, since my parents had died, since I'd learned I was pregnant and alone for the first time in years, I felt like I'd found home. Not in the cottage, beautiful as it was, but in the arms of a dangerous man who looked at me like I was worth protecting. The next 3 weeks passed in a golden haze of discovery and contentment. Dante visited the cottage every evening, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes arriving just to sit with me and feel the baby kick. He was surprisingly gentle for a man whose reputation was built on ruthless efficiency. His large hands careful on my belly, his voice soft when he spoke to my daughter through my skin. "She needs a name," he said one evening, stretched out on the couch with my feet in his lap, massaging the swelling away with patient fingers. "I've been thinking about Sofia," I said. "After my mother. Sofia Castellano." He tested the name, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "It suits her. I didn't say her last name would be Castellano. Didn't you?" His smile was knowing, possessive. "She's mine to protect, Maria. That means she carries my name." I should have argued, should have defended my independence. But the truth was, I wanted it, wanted the protection his name offered, wanted the world to know this child belonged to someone powerful enough to shield her from everything that had hurt me. "Okay," I whispered. "Sofia Castellano." He pulled me closer, his lips finding mine in a kiss that started tender and deepened into something that made heat pool low in my belly. His hand slid up my leg, under the loose dress I wore, but he stopped himself before going too far. "Not until after the baby," he said, his voice rough with restraint. "I won't risk hurting either of you. The consideration, the self-control, it made me want him even more. But our bubble of peace couldn't last forever. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was in the main mansion's kitchen, having volunteered to help with preparations for a business dinner Dante was hosting. Carmen had protested that I didn't need to work anymore, but I'd insisted. Sitting idle in the cottage made me feel useless, disconnected from the reality of my situation. I was arranging appetizers on silver trays when Sofia rushed in, her face pale. "Maria, you need to leave," Now." "What? Why?" "Miss Marchetti just arrived, with her father and brothers. They're demanding to see Mr. Castellano, and they're angry, really angry." My stomach dropped. "Isabella." I'd known this confrontation was coming, but I'd hoped for more time, more distance between the broken engagement and whatever reckoning the Marchetti family demanded. "Go to your cottage and lock the doors," Sophia urged. "Marco already sent word to Mr. Castellano. He's on his way back from the city." But before I could move, raised voices echoed from the main foyer, male voices, furious and loud, and one female voice cutting through like a blade. "Isabella, humiliated our entire family. You break our engagement without warning, without explanation. And for what? For some pregnant whore you've been hiding in the cottage?" My blood turned to ice. She knew. Of course she knew. In a world like this, secrets didn't stay buried long. "Miss Maria, please." Carmen appeared at my elbow. "Come with me, the service stairs." "No." The word surprised me as much as it surprised them. "No, I'm not hiding, Maria." But I was already moving toward the foyer, my heart hammering but my spine straight. If Isabella was going to destroy me, she'd do it to my face. I emerged from the kitchen corridor into the grand foyer to find Isabella standing in a circle of men, her father, a silver-haired man with cold eyes, and her 3 brothers, all built like linebackers and looking ready for violence. Dante's security team, including Marco and Alessandro, stood at strategic positions around the room, hands near concealed weapons, faces impassive but alert. And in the center, facing down the Marchetti family with casual confidence, stood Dante himself. He must have broken every speed limit getting here from the city. His suit jacket was missing, his tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. But his eyes were calm, his posture relaxed, and when he spoke, his voice carried absolute authority. "I've explained this twice already, Lorenzo. The engagement is terminated. There's nothing to negotiate." "You don't terminate arrangements made by our fathers." Lorenzo Marchetti, Isabella's father, shot back. "You honor them, or you explain why you can't." "Very well." Dante's eyes swept the room and landed on me standing in the kitchen doorway. Something flickered in his expression, concern, warning, but he didn't order me away. "I can't marry your daughter because I don't love her, don't respect her, and won't tie myself to a woman who terrorizes people weaker than herself." Isabella's face flushed with rage. "This is about the staff? About that pregnant bitch in the cottage?" "Watch your mouth," Dante said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You're in my house. Show respect or leave." "Respect? Respect?" Isabella laughed, the sound shrill and ugly. "You want to talk about respect? You've been fucking the help while wearing my ring." "That's a lie," Dante said evenly. "I've never touched Maria inappropriately. She's under my protection, nothing more. The lie was for my benefit, I realized. To protect my reputation, to give me plausible deniability. But Isabella wasn't buying it. "Protection?" She sneered. "Is that what we're calling it? You move her into the cottage, spend every night there, buy her a car, pay for her medical care, but it's just protection?" "Yes," Dante's voice was steel. "It is, and it's none of your concern anymore." Lorenzo Marchetti stepped forward, his face hard. "You're making a mistake, Dante. Our families have been allied for 3 generations. My daughter was chosen specifically to strengthen that alliance. Breaking the engagement without cause is an insult we can't ignore." "I've given you cause," Dante replied. "Isabella's behavior toward my staff was unacceptable. That's sufficient reason to end any arrangement." "The staff?" One of Isabella's brothers laughed. "You're choosing servants over family alliance?" "I'm choosing decency over cruelty." "Yes." The room fell silent, tension crackling like electricity. I could see the Marchetti men processing this, calculating angles, looking for leverage. Then Isabella's eyes found mine across the foyer, and her smile turned vicious. "Tell me, Maria," she called out, her voice carrying clearly. "When's the baby due?" My hands instinctively moved to my belly. 3 months. And when exactly did you start working? Here? I saw the trap but couldn't avoid it. 4 months ago. Interesting. Isabella turned back to Dante. So you hired a woman who was already 3 months pregnant. Very charitable of you. Tell me, was Miguel Santos worth the money you paid him to disappear? The accusation hit like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Oh, didn't you know? Isabella's smile was cruel, triumphant. Dante had your ex tracked down. Miguel was paid $50,000 to sign away all parental rights and leave the city, the same week you were hired here. I looked at Dante, silently begging him to deny it, but his expression was carefully neutral. He didn't deny it, couldn't deny it, because it was true. Maria, he started, you paid him off? My voice was barely a whisper. All this time? You've been lying to me? I was protecting you, Dante said quietly. Miguel was never going to be a father to your daughter. I just ensured he couldn't come back and cause problems later. That wasn't your decision to make. The words burst out of me, loud enough to echo off the marble floors. That was my life, my choice, I couldn't finish, couldn't breathe through the betrayal crushing my chest. See? Isabella gestured toward me. Even your pet whore thinks you're a manipulative bastard. Face it, Dante, you haven't changed. You're still the same controlling, ruthless man your father raised you to be. You just dress it up differently now. Isabella, enough, her father warned. But she was past restraint, past caution. No, Papa. He needs to hear this. He thinks he can collect broken things and fix them first, me, trying to soften my edges and make me weak, now this pregnant maid he's playing savior to. But he can't change what he is. He's a criminal, a killer, and everyone he touches gets destroyed. Get out. Dante's voice was quiet, but it carried such menace that even Isabella's brothers took a step back. All of you, out of my house, now. Gladly, Isabella spat. But this isn't over, Dante. The Marchettis don't forget insults. And when your little empire starts crumbling, when your allies realize you're more interested in playing house with the help than maintaining the family business, don't come crying to us for support. She swept out, her family following. The massive front doors slammed behind them with a finality that echoed through the suddenly silent foyer. Dante turned to me, his expression pleading. Maria, let me explain. Did you pay him? I cut him off. $50,000 to disappear? He hesitated, then nodded. Yes. When? The day after I read your background file. Before I ever spoke to you. The timeline made it worse somehow. He'd been manipulating my life before we'd even had our first real conversation. I need to go, I said, backing toward the kitchen corridor. I need to think. Maria, please. Don't. I held up my hand, tears streaming down my face. Just don't. Not right now. I fled to the cottage, locked the doors as Sophia had advised, and collapsed on the couch, sobbing so hard my whole body shook. The baby kicked frantically, responding to my distress, which only made me cry harder. He'd manipulated me. From the very beginning, Dante had been pulling strings, arranging my life without my knowledge or consent. The cottage, the car, Miguel's disappearance. How much of it had been genuine care, and how much had been just another form of control. A knock on the door made me jump. Maria, it's me. Dante's voice, muffled through the wood. Please, let me in. Let me explain. Go away. I'm not leaving until we talk. I'll stand out here all night if I have to. Part of me wanted to let him suffer, wanted to punish him for the betrayal. But a larger part, the part that had felt so safe in his arms, needed to understand. I opened the door. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, tie gone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usual composure shattered. Talk, I said, not moving aside to let him in. You have 5 minutes. The day I read your file, he began, his voice rough. I learned everything about you. Your parents' death. foster care, Miguel's abandonment. And I saw a pattern. I recognized people who should have protected you failing at every turn. He ran his hand through his hair. So yes, I tracked down Miguel. Yes, I paid him to disappear and sign away his rights. Because I knew, even then, even before I knew you, that you deserved better than a man who would abandon his pregnant girlfriend. That wasn't your choice to make. I know. His voice cracked. I know it wasn't. But Maria, I'm not a good man. I'm the man Isabella called me: controlling, ruthless, used to getting my way. When I see a problem, I solve it. When I see something broken, I fix it. That's who I am. I'm not broken, I said fiercely. And I'm not a problem to solve. No, he agreed softly. You're not. You're the strongest person I've ever met, but I'm still the man who sees someone he cares about struggling and does whatever it takes to help, even if it means crossing lines, even if it means not asking permission first. He stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel his warmth. I can't promise I'll never make decisions without consulting you. I can't promise I'll always ask before protecting you. That's not who I am, and I won't lie about it. Then what can you promise? My voice broke on the question. I can promise that every decision I make, every line I cross, every rule I break, it will always be because I care about you more than I care about being right. I can promise that I'll try to be better, to include you, to remember that you're not someone to be managed, but someone to be loved. Loved? The word hung between us, unspoken until now, undeniable in its truth. You love me? I whispered. His dark eyes held mine, vulnerable and fierce at once. From the moment you looked at me, through that service door, terrified, but standing your ground. Yes, Maria, I love you, desperately, completely, in a way that terrifies me because it means Isabella was right. You are my weakness. The one thing that could destroy me. Tears streamed down my face again, but different tears now. You should have told me. About Miguel, about everything. I deserved the truth. You're right. And from now on, you'll have it. All of it, no matter how ugly. He reached for my hand, his touch gentle, questioning. But Maria, I need you to understand something. The world I live in, it doesn't allow for slow, careful decisions. Sometimes I have to act fast, protect first, and explain later. Can you live with that? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Could I accept a man who would always try to control situations for my benefit? Who would make decisions he thought were best without asking? Who came from a world of violence and would use that violence to protect what was his? The answer should have been no. Should have been run, flee, take your daughter and disappear into a normal life with a normal man. But standing there, my hand in his, feeling the desperate sincerity radiating from him, I knew my answer. I can live with it, I said softly. If you can live with me calling you out when you cross too many lines, if you can accept that I'm your partner, not your responsibility. Relief washed over his face so completely I thought his legs might give out. Yes, God, yes, partners, equals, whatever you need. He pulled me into his arms then, and I let him, pressing my face against his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling his heart hammer against my cheek. I'm still mad at you, I mumbled against his shirt. I know, and I'm going to need time to trust you completely again. I know, but I love you too, I admitted, the words muffled but clear. Even though you're controlling and manipulative and terrifying. His arms tightened around me. Those are my best qualities. I laughed despite everything, the sound watery but genuine. We're completely insane, aren't it? Probably. He pulled back just enough to look at my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears. But I'll take insane with you over sane without you any day. He kissed me then, and it felt like a promise, like a vow, like the beginning of something that would probably be messy and complicated, but also real and deep and worth fighting for. When we finally broke apart, I took his hand and led him inside the cottage, closing the door on the world outside, on Isabella's threats, on family alliances, on everything except this moment, this man, and the life we were choosing to build together. We spent the rest of the evening on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his hand on my belly, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his father's death, about the weight of inherited responsibility. I told him about my parents' restaurant, about the dreams I'd had before life had derailed them. After Sophia is born, he said quietly, if you want to go back to school, finish your degree, I'll make it happen. I want to work, I said. Not as a maid, but something meaningful. Maybe event planning? I'm good at organizing things. Then we'll make that happen too. He kissed the top of my head. Whatever you want, Maria, I mean that. What I want, I said, turning to look at him, is for you to keep cooking me dinner. For you to be there when Sophia is born. For you to teach me about your world so I'm not always playing catch-up. And for you to remember that I chose you with full knowledge of who and what you are. His eyes softened. I can do that. We fell asleep there again, tangled together, and I dreamed of futures that felt possible for the first time in years. But our peace lasted only 3 days. I was in the nursery, folding tiny clothes I'd ordered from the baby registry Dante had set up, when my phone rang, the secure one Dante had given me, programmed with only essential contacts. It was Alessandro, Dante's second-in-command, and his voice was tense. Maria, I need you to listen carefully and do exactly what I say. Lock all the doors and windows. Move to the interior bedroom, no windows. And don't open the door for anyone except Marco or me. Understood? My heart seized. What's happening? The Marchettis. They're making a move. We knew they would retaliate, but we didn't expect this so soon. Dante's handling it, but he needs to know you're safe. Where is he? In the city, dealing with the situation. Just please, Maria, do what I'm telling you. I hung up and immediately followed his instructions, my hands shaking as I locked windows and doors, my mind racing through possibilities. What kind of move? Violence? Legal action? Something else entirely? I was in the master bedroom, the most interior room with the thickest walls, when I heard the sound of cars outside, multiple engines, coming fast. My phone rang again. Marco this time. Maria, it's all right, it's us. Dante sent additional security. I'm at your front door with 4 men. We're going to secure the perimeter and stay until this is resolved. I let them in, and suddenly my cozy cottage was full of armed men in tactical gear, checking sight lines, posting guards. It was terrifying and reassuring in equal measure. What's happening? I asked Marco. Please, I need to know. He hesitated, then seemed to decide I deserved the truth. The Marchettis hired the Rossetti family to challenge Dante's territorial claims. They're saying the broken engagement invalidates all previous agreements between the families. If Dante can't defend his position, he loses everything: the shipping contracts, the restaurant chains, the legitimate businesses that fund everything else. And if he fights back? Marco's expression was grim. Then we're looking at a war. People will die, some of them ours. I sank onto the couch, my hand on my belly, feeling Sophia kick in response to my racing heartbeat. This was my fault. If Dante hadn't broken the engagement, if he hadn't chosen me over Isabella, none of this would be happening. Don't, Marco said, reading my expression. Don't blame yourself. This was coming anyway. Isabella's father has been angling for more power for years. You were just the excuse, not the cause. But knowing that didn't ease the guilt, didn't stop the fear. Hours passed with no word. The men outside rotated shifts, maintaining constant vigilance. I tried to rest but couldn't, pacing the bedroom, checking my phone obsessively for messages that didn't come. Finally, at nearly midnight, headlights swept the cottage. Marco's radio crackled. Boss incoming. I was at the door before he could stop me, pulling it open to find Dante striding up the path. He looked exhausted, his suit dirty, a cut above his eyebrow that was still bleeding slightly. But he was alive, whole, and the relief nearly brought me to my knees. "You're okay," I breathed as he reached me. "I'm okay." He pulled me against him, his arms like iron bands. "God, Maria, I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming, should have protected you better." "I'm fine. We're fine." I pulled back to look at his face, gently touching the cut above his eye. "What happened?" The Rosettas made their move. We countered. "It's handled." The carefully neutral words didn't fool me. Handled how? His eyes met mine, and I saw the darkness there, the reminder of what he was capable of. "Some problems can only be solved permanently, Maria. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine. I should have been horrified, should have pushed him away, demanded details, recoiled from the violence implicit in his words. Instead, I pulled him inside, into the bedroom, away from the guards and staff, and let him hold me while the adrenaline drained from his system and exhaustion replaced it. "The Marchettas?" I asked quietly. "Lorenzo knows better than to push further. He'll back down, save face by claiming he was honoring my father's memory by testing my strength. In a week, this will all be forgotten. And Isabella? Gone. Her father is sending her to Europe for a year. When she returns, if she returns, it will be with a new understanding of how things work." I nodded against his chest, processing. This was his world: power plays and violent solutions, respect earned through strength, and problems that disappeared permanently. It should have terrified me. But lying there in his arms, feeling his heart beat steadily against my cheek, I felt only safe. "I want to know," I said suddenly. "Everything. Who you really are, what you really do, all of it." He stiffened. "Maria, no secrets," I insisted. "If we're doing this, really doing this, then I need to know what I'm part of. I can handle it, Dante. But I can't handle being kept in the dark." For a long moment he was silent. Then he began to talk. He told me about his father's empire, built over 4 decades through a combination of legitimate business and less legitimate enterprises. He explained the network of alliances and obligations, the way power flowed through families and territories. He described his role not quite the crime lord Isabella had called him, but not far from it either. Protection rackets, smuggling operations, political connections maintained through carefully distributed bribes. "I've killed people," he said quietly. "Not many, and never without cause. But yes, I have blood on my hands. To protect yourself? Sometimes. Sometimes to protect others who couldn't protect themselves. Sometimes because the alternative was worse." I absorbed this, turning it over in my mind. "Do you want out? Is that even possible?" He laughed bitterly. "There is no out, Maria. This world doesn't let you retire. The best I can do is try to shift toward more legitimate operations, reduce the violence, build something I won't be ashamed to pass down to." He stopped. "To Sophia?" I finished softly. His hand found my belly, pressing gently. "I want her to inherit an empire, not a kingdom of blood. I want her to have choices I didn't." "Is that naive?" "It's hopeful," I corrected. "And hope is never naive." We fell asleep like that, his hand on my belly, our daughter kicking occasionally between us, and I felt the shift between us solidify into something unbreakable. This was my choice. This man, this life, this complicated, dangerous, beautiful reality, and I'd never been more certain of anything. The next weeks blurred together in a strange combination of normalcy and tension. Dante's predictions proved accurate. The Marchettas backed down, and gradually, the security presence around the cottage relaxed. But something had fundamentally changed. The rest of Dante's organization now knew about me, about my importance to him. That made me both protected and a potential target. Dante responded by bringing me more fully into his world. I attended dinners with business associates, learning to read the undercurrents of conversation, understanding what was said and what was merely implied. Alessandro's wife, Gianna, took me under her wing, teaching me the unspoken rules of this life, when to speak, when to listen, how to project strength while remaining gracious. "You're a natural," she told me one afternoon over tea in my cottage. "Most women in our world are born to it, or marry into it, and struggle for years. But you understand instinctively how to navigate." "Maybe because I've spent my life making myself invisible," I said. "I know how to read rooms, how to avoid danger. That's part of it," she agreed. "But there's more. You have genuine compassion, Maria. People respond to that. Even dangerous men want to believe they're more than their worst actions. You make them believe it." I thought about that later, watching Dante work in his study, reviewing contracts, taking calls, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. He looked up and caught me watching, his stern expression softening immediately. "What?" he asked. "Just thinking about how complicated you are." He set down his pen and held out his hand. I crossed to him, letting him pull me onto his lap, more difficult now at 8 months pregnant. But he adjusted easily, his arms coming around me, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Tell me," he prompted. "Gianna said I help people see they're more than their worst actions. But you've shown me I'm more than my worst moments. More than the abandoned pregnant woman, more than the scared girl in foster care. You've given me the chance to be someone strong." His arms tightened. "You were always strong, Maria. I just gave you space to show it." 2 weeks before my due date, Dante surprised me with a ceremony in the cottage's small garden. Nothing formal, nothing legal yet that would come after Sophia's birth. But Alessandro officiated while Gianna stood beside me, and Dante slipped a ring onto my finger, simple platinum with a single diamond, elegant and understated. "This is a promise," he said, his dark eyes holding mine, "that whatever comes, whatever threats we face, whatever challenges this life throws at us, I'll stand beside you. As your partner, your protector, your equal. You're not just the mother of my child, Maria. You're my heart, the better part of me, the reason I want to build something worth leaving behind." I cried through my vows, promising to trust him, to call him on his controlling tendencies, to be the conscience he sometimes needed. And when he kissed me, sealing our unofficial union, I felt the rightness of it in my bones. This was where I belonged. Not in the mansion, not among the legitimate world I'd left behind, but here in the complicated space between light and dark, with a man who would burn down the world to keep me safe. Sofia Castellano was born 3 days later, on a Tuesday morning at precisely 6:47 a.m. Labor started in the middle of the night, and Dante drove me to the private hospital himself, breaking every speed limit, his hand gripping mine so tightly I thought my bones might crack. "Breathe," I reminded him during a contraction. "You're supposed to be calm." "I am calm," he said, his voice tight with panic as he took another turn at dangerous speed. "This is me calm." Alessandro met us at the hospital with a full security team, 4 men who positioned themselves outside my delivery room like sentries. It would have been ridiculous if it wasn't also strangely touching. 12 hours later, Sophia emerged, screaming her fury at the world, all 6 pounds 11 ounces of her, with dark hair like her mother and her father's serious expression. Dante held her for the first time with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts, his large hands so gentle, his eyes wet with tears he didn't bother hiding. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Maria, she's absolutely perfect." I watched him with our daughter, saw the transformation that fatherhood worked instantly, the softening of his hard edges, the wonder in his face, the fierce protectiveness that radiated from every line of his body. "She looks like you," he said, still staring at Sophia in awe. "Thank God. One of us should be beautiful." "You're beautiful," I said, exhausted but happy, in a terrifying, dangerous way. He laughed, the sound watery with emotion. "I'll take it." For 3 days we existed in a bubble at the hospital. Dante rarely left my side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair beside my bed, taking turns with the night feedings, learning how to change diapers with the same focus he brought to business negotiations. On our last day, as we prepared to leave, Gianna arrived with news. "Isabella's back," she said quietly, her eyes apologetic. "She landed this morning. Her father couldn't keep her in Europe any longer." Dante's expression hardened instantly. "She's already been informed that Maria and Sofia are under my protection." "If she comes near them, she won't," Gianna interrupted. "Lorenzo made it very clear what the consequences would be." "But Dante, you should know she's telling people the baby is Miguel's. That you're just playing house with a woman who used you to secure a better life for her illegitimate child." Rage flashed across his face, but before he could speak, I caught his hand. "Let her," I said quietly. "Let people believe whatever they want. We know the truth. The truth matters," he argued. Sofia deserves a father who's present, not one who's constantly fighting battles against spiteful exes. Isabella can say whatever she wants. It doesn't change what we have." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. You're always right." "Not always," I smiled. "But in this case, yes." We brought Sofia home to the cottage, to the nursery with painted stars, and the rocking chair where Dante spent hours soothing her to sleep. Life settled into a new rhythm, exhausting, beautiful, chaotic, and perfect. 6 months later, I stood in the garden of the Castellano mansion, no longer a place where I cleaned, but the home where I lived. Dante had proposed we move from the cottage to the mansion after Sofia was born, and after some deliberation, I'd agreed. The cottage would always be special to us, the place where our love story truly began. But the mansion offered space, security, and the resources to raise our daughter safely. And I'd made it clear, if we were living there, I was living there as Dante's equal, not as staff who had been promoted. Carmen and the others reported to me now. The household ran according to standards I set. And while Dante still made the final decisions on security and business matters, I had veto power over anything that affected our family directly. "Partners?" He'd agreed. "Equals," just like I promised. Today, we were hosting our first official dinner, since moving in a small gathering of Dante's most trusted associates and their families. Nothing business-related, just a chance to show the world that Dante Castellano had a family now, a home, something worth protecting beyond power and profit. I moved through the guests with Sofia on my hip, making conversation, playing hostess with the confidence that came from knowing I belonged here. Not because I'd earned it through my work or because Dante had elevated me, but because I'd chosen this life with open eyes and had made it my own. Isabella was notably absent. She'd married a banker from Milan 3 months earlier in what everyone agreed was a strategic move by her father to cement new alliances. Rumors said she was miserable, but I couldn't bring myself to care. She'd made her choices, and they'd led her elsewhere. Dante found me on the terrace as the sun was setting, Sofia asleep against my shoulder. "Successful party," he said, sliding his arm around my waist. "Very. Alessandro's children are adorable, and Gianna told me she's pregnant again." "Good for them." He kissed the top of Sofia's head, then mine. "Happy?" I looked out over the grounds, the gardens I'd once only seen as a maid, the mansion that was now my home, the man beside me who'd given me back my life in ways I was still discovering. Deliriously, I said honestly, "You? More than I knew was possible." His arms tightened around us. "I spent so many years believing happiness was weakness, that caring too much made you vulnerable. My father taught me that love was a liability in our world. And now?" He turned me to face him, his dark eyes serious. "Now I know it's the opposite. Love made me stronger. You and Sofia, you're not my weakness, Maria. You're my strength. The reason I fight to build something better. The reason I get up every morning and try to be the man you deserve." I kissed him softly, carefully not to wake our daughter. "You already are." "I'm really not," he said with rare honesty. "But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying. Behind us, someone called Dante's name business, needing attention even at family gatherings. He sighed but didn't move immediately. Go, I said. We'll be here when you're finished. He kissed me again, longer this time, then disappeared inside to handle whatever crisis required his attention. I stayed on the terrace with Sophia, sleeping against my shoulder, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, and thought about the journey that had brought me here. A year ago, I'd been alone and terrified, scrubbing floors in a mansion where I was invisible. Now I stood in that same mansion as its lady, mother to its heir, wife unofficial but recognized to its master. It hadn't been a fairy tale. There'd been manipulation and secrets, violence and danger, moments when I'd questioned every choice. But there'd also been genuine love, hard-won trust, and the slow building of something real between two people who'd both been taught that happiness was impossible. Sophia stirred against my shoulder, making the little sounds that meant she'd wake soon and demand feeding. I shifted her gently, preparing to go inside, when I felt Dante's presence behind me again. That was quick, I said. I told them it could wait. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding the small of my back. This is more important. Watching the sunset? Watching you watch the sunset, holding my daughter, being with my family. He paused. Being the man who gets to call you mine. I leaned into him, letting his strength support me, feeling Sophia's small warmth between us. We're all yours, I said softly. For as long as you want us. His arms came around us both, sheltering and protective. Forever, then. I want you forever. And standing there in the golden light, with our daughter sleeping peacefully and the dangerous, complicated world held temporarily at bay, I believed him. This was our happily ever after, not perfect, not simple, but real and hard-won, and ours, and that was more than enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.